What is a hypothesis? Well, first of all, it must be a statement. If it's got a question mark at the end of it, it's not a hypothesis. Okay, so we can make a statement. Here's one. All swans are birds. Now, for this to be a hypothesis, it needs to meet two criteria. First, it needs to be falsifiable. It must be possible that my statement can be refuted by evidence. Well, my statement, all swans are birds, can't be contradicted by evidence. Swans are birds. By definition, there's no swan that isn't a bird. It's impossible. So my statement that all swans are birds is not falsifiable. Therefore, it's not a hypothesis. Let's try another. All swans are white. Now we're onto something. It's possible for this one to be falsified. We can imagine finding a swan that isn't white. The next criterion is that a hypothesis must be testable. It's fine to be able to imagine that there is a swan that isn't white, but can we test this in practice? Well, for the swan hypothesis, the answer is yes. It is testable. We just need to go out and look at swans. As soon as we find one that isn't white, we've both tested and falsified the hypothesis. So I go out and I look for swans and I find one that isn't white. What does that mean? It means that I have found against the hypothesis. Okay, let's go back to the article. Hypotheses are always numbered, H1, H2, H3 and so on. I'm just going to look at H1. Countries with high population growth are more likely to experience domestic armed conflict than countries with low population growth. So, is this statement both falsifiable and testable? Well, on the falsifiability, we can certainly imagine finding against it. We can, for instance, imagine finding that the opposite is the case, that countries with high population growth are less likely to experience armed conflict than countries with low population growth. Another way of finding against the hypothesis would be to find what we call the null hypothesis. We may very well find that countries with high population growth are neither more nor less likely to experience domestic armed conflict than countries with low population growth rates. In that case, we say that we have found in favour of the null hypothesis. As for being testable, well, it is testable, but it's going to take a lot of work. We need to sit down, make a list of countries and determine which ones have high and low population growth rates, and count how many incidents of armed conflict each country has experienced. If we can do that, then we can test the hypothesis. Fortunately, Henrik has done this for us, but how? Well, that comes in the next stage of the paper, the research design. Right, see you in a bit, swans. Ta-ra!